Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 477. One Single Fable. Part 1. He took a very long time to get to that decision. I stared at Yu Hyuk making that declaration. The original plan wasn't like this. He was supposed to use the memories from the 999th turn and buy as much time as possible. He was to stimulate the outer gods appropriately and persuade them. There will be no next regression for me. Even though I was looking at a guy completely, utterly trashing my plan to bits, for some reason I didn't get angry. Yu Hyuk, a former regressor. Only now could I truly comprehend what he said back then. I had been thinking that the reason for the rapid growth of this turn's Yu Hyuk was down to the information I provided and the interference from other variables. However, now I couldn't say that anymore. The proof was the fables rising up from Yu Hyuk's entire frame. Fables that contained not the desperation, but the will of a lifetime. Yu Hyuk had bet everything on this regression. Just like a locomotive dashing forward by exhausting every ounce of its fuel, Yu Hyuk was doing everything he possibly could to live this life. This regression turn was not the base material for his next life. Captain, you're lying, right? Ing? You're kidding, right? Hai's expression creaked and distorted. It wasn't merely an expression of someone betrayed by the belief she held on to. No, that was the face of a person whose world had crumbled. She then reached out towards that last straw she had been chasing after all this time. Unfortunately, Yu Hyuk didn't grab that hand. Hai. Have I ever lied to you before? Why? Explosive auras were leaking out from her entire body now. I sensed the 999th's turn's history going violently out of control. Why? Fables were asking why it was not the 999th turn, but us. Why was it not the world they lived in, but this one? I was about to take a step forward, but Yu Hyuk stopped me. Stay back. His cheeks were trembling painfully. No matter how hard he tried to hide his emotions, he still couldn't erase his unique behavior. I sighed softly and replied. We can't retreat anymore, anyway. Apologies. It's fine. This is your choice, after all. At a casual glance, Yu Hyuk might seem like a realist, but actually, he was far more of an idealist than anyone out there. From the get-go, there was no way someone would repeatedly regress unless he doggedly held on to his ideals. And in order to protect such a dude's ideals, someone had to take on the role of a realist. I took another step forward while looking at the waves of outer gods, about to rush and full of indignation. Yu Hyuk did not choose to forsake your world line. I used every ounce of my energy to use that true voice, causing the outer god kings to look at me. The 999th turns Hai, Hyun Song, Kim Nam Woon, Boreal. Have you all forgotten? He was never in a position to choose, but always had it chosen for him. He had repeatedly regressed, but Yu Hyuk had never regressed because he really wanted to. Even when he had to discard the third turn and regressed to the fourth, and when he gave up on the fourth and chose to go to the fifth, it wasn't out of his will, his desire. The regression wasn't his choice, but his fate. What chose it wasn't him, but the story that desired his regression. We have no need to fight each other. Why must one tragedy compete against another one? I had no idea whether these words would work or not, but even then, I simply had to say them. We won't forsake you. We do not wish to remember you all as calamities. We want to. I looked up at the sky. I felt dizzy for a moment there from all the boundless gazes I hadn't seen before bearing down on me, but I didn't avoid meeting them head-on. Just like how Yu Hyuk was not the same Yu Hyuk from the 0th turn, I too wasn't Kim Dokja of the first scenario. We want to fight against that sky together with all of you. Beyond the skies, the stars began illuminating in sheer madness. The absolute majority of the constellations can't understand your declaration. Great Dakibis from the Bureau are shocked by your intentions. Indirect messages rain down like starlight. If it was before, I'd been too busy reading those messages, but now, I knew the truth. The reality was, all those starlights in the sky were nothing more than ornaments to hide the fact that the darkness existed there. The king of stories is now looking at you. It was then I heard a very faint chuckle. Oh, do you even know what you're talking about? Are you saying that you want to destroy Starstream? The snide voice belonged to the 999th Turn's Kim Nam-woon. You think we haven't tried that before? The depths of emotions contained within his voice was unfathomable. He was smiling, but he wasn't really smiling. That exaggerated smile hid the sense of resignation deep within. We already tried that. We shot down all the constellations, and we even killed the Dakibi king of our world line, too. You know what happened when we did? Kim Nam-woon walked on the ocean's surface and stood right before me. And as if to transmit the sweetest despair known to men, he whispered to me next. The world just vanished. I silently listened to his words. We definitely cleared the scenarios properly. We even completed all the conditions, yet we lost everything we loved. There was no miracle, no reward at the end of the line. I recalled the words uttered out by the 999th Turn's Uriel. If the star stream disappears, the whole universe will fall into chaos. Such a world line must never be created. That is the way of evil. That's what she said when I mentioned my goal of destroying the star stream. Kim Nam-woon continued on. You know what we saw at the end of the world? You probably saw a massive wall. A great wall that surrounds all of the worlds, the one where you can't even see its beginning or the end. And how do you even know that? Because that's where our true goal is, too. What we want to achieve isn't simply the destruction of Starstream. I repeated with my own voice what the secretive plotter told me earlier. And it's to eliminate the ringleader of all these tragedies hiding behind that final wall. The 999th Turn's Kim Nam-woon stared at me as if he was greatly shocked by this revelation. His lips bobbed up and down many times before he finally roared out. No one can go past the final wall. That's Namuna. These people, they possess the final key that might allow them to go over the final wall. Lee Hyun-sung raised his voice. Kim Nam-woon alternated his gaze between Lee Hyun-sung and me, looking utterly confused. I simply nodded my head towards him. The Outer God Kings are getting agitated by your announcement. Your declaration is causing a rapid change in the 98th scenario. A large number of constellations are indignant of your choice. It was fine if the stars didn't want to side with us. It was also fine if other nebulas didn't want to join us, either. However, if these four decided to stand on our side, if these kings that lived through the 999th turn remained in this world line and fought alongside us, then let's say that you possess such a key. The moment I heard that voice, I felt a chill run down my spine. In that case, is there a reason for me not to snatch that key away from you? The moment Kim Nam-woon's short sword got closer in the blink of an eye and took aim at my neck. Clang! The sword's trajectory streaming before my eyes deflected his short sword. As the heavy impact force resounded out, both Yu Young-hyuk and Kim Nam-woon were forced back a couple of steps. Ha ha ha. This is it. This is that feeling. Blood trickled down the monarch of the Great Abyss's hand after that collision against the dark heavenly demon sword. Do you have any idea how long I've been waiting for this? Do you know how long I had to wander aimlessly just for a chance to fight against you? The monarch of the Great Abyss, the being who traveled through the inordinate amount of time just to revive that one opponent he had been idolizing. Great fable, delusional design, has begun its storytelling. The 999th Turn's Uriel supported the wobbling E.G. High and got into the battle stance as well. You told me this once before. If, by any chance, you become another existence that's not you, you wanted me to kill you personally. Along with the blinding explosion, the sun in the air began emitting light once more. Looks like that time is now. What blocked the outpouring of the heat wave was the forged steel, completely filling up our view. You must escape. I can't stop them by myself. The 999th turns Hyan Song was different from the others as he wasn't summoned as the calamity. Meaning, unlike them, he didn't enjoy the grace of the scenario. Kim Dokja. Almost at the same time, my companions arrived on site. Han Suyong, flying on the back of the black flame dragon, was the first to ask, "What happened here?" As you can see. She bit down on her lip, hard. I didn't say anything else and instead, looked at my companions. At Zhang Huiwen. Xin Yusung, Yi Gilyang, Yi Jihai, and Yu Sanga. This is the final hurdle. They should also probably guessed it. I ask of you this. Please, make sure not to die. At least during this fight, even I was helpless to protect my companions. Kwaya. Along with the impact force akin to heaven and earth appending, violent tsunami waves and sunlight intermingled. Blades clashing against each other could be spied within the rising white foams, trying to blind our view. The blackish light sliced into the ocean. Yu Yonghyuk was fighting, while enduring against the combined assaults of the 999th turns Kim Namwoon and Uriel, he was displaying a shocking level of martial prowess. Great Fable, Pilgrim of the Lonely Apocalypse, has begun its storytelling. Fable, Hellscape of Eternity, has begun its storytelling. The hidden, shored-up power strong enough to contend with two kings, now that was Yu Yonghyuk's true strength. Every fable he had built up all this time was exploding forth simultaneously. Disconnected film theory's connection is incomplete. Cracks are developing in the fable's continuity. Unfortunately, the balance couldn't be maintained forever. Dokja SSI. I shifted my head to find Zhang Huiwen there. The Archangel's blinding wings were spreading out from her back. The Beast Lord Xin Yusung, the Naval Admiral Yi Jihai, and the Emperor of Steelsword, Yi Hyan Song. My comrades who lived a different life compared to the original storyline, and thus were currently marching towards a different resolution. We glanced at each other and nodded. I'll help Yonghyuk SSI, so the rest of you, please take care of that side. Constellation, demon-like Judge of Fire, is unleashing her status. Zhang Huiwen spread her wings wide and flew towards Yu Yonghyuk under the blessing of Uriel. It seemed that that was the Archangel's choice. She now knew that the Outer God King happened to be herself from the far-flung distant future, so. I told you this before. Without the nebula's grace, you can't oppose me. The flames of retribution, soaring through the sky as if to puncture, it was now crashing back down towards the ocean. However, we had no time to worry about Zhang Huiwen. Because there was yet another existence pouring out her boundless status in our direction at the moment. Among the parting, exploding waves, the 999th turns Yi Jihai was staring at us with her hollow eyes. Everyone, please evade. Yu Sanga stepped forward and distorted the time and space. Unfortunately, Sakyamana's ability was useless when facing the true might of that Outer God King. Along with the loud ripping noise, the distorted time/space was forcibly spread open. The battleship of the 999th turns Yi Jihai was now rising up from the depths of the ocean. The turtle dragon of the master of the sunken island resembled more of an island rather than a ship at this stage. A juicy. Sensing the danger, Xin Yusung had her chimera dragon spew out its breath. And when she did, all aquatic creatures hiding below the water's surface rushed out, as well. Gao! Monsters screeching out viciously pounced on the battleship's hull. However, the island was simply far too large for them to stop. The loud noises of monsters being crushed could be heard next. The wide expanse of the ocean vibrated heavily and the tsunami wave rolled out. Hyung, take a step back. Hurry! Kim Dokja, disappear to the back already, will ya? My companions surrounded me as if to protect me and began desperately fighting back. I was aware of why they were doing this, of course. And I also knew what they were scared of, too. I only have to erase everything. The 999th turns Yi Jihai was crying out beyond the tidal waves. Everything, it can be made anew. It's nothing at all. Then, Captain will realize it, too. He will know that this world can be destroyed at any time. That it's possible that the world we lived in was the real deal. Quack 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 quack. A huge tsunami crashed in, accompanied by the round of cannon shelling vicious enough to blow up the entire ocean. The wave scale was the largest we had ever seen. If that thing continued on its way, then even if my mother was there, the Korean peninsula was as good as finished. Fable, Demon King of Salvation, has begun its storytelling. Han Soo-young's expression changed for the worse as she shouted out. Kim Dokja. If you do anything stupid, don't worry. I lightly patted her shoulder and stepped forward. The scenes of the scenarios we experienced together flitted in and out of my view. Great Fable, Demon World Spring, has begun its storytelling. Great Fable, Torch that swallowed the myth, has begun its storytelling. Great Fable, Season of Light and Darkness, has begun its storytelling. Every time a new Great Fable was created, I had to risk certain death. I believed that was the only way, and thought that was the correct way. Great Fable, Liberator of the Forgotten Ones, is looking at you. The constrictive headband, this shackle that my companions personally placed on me, tightened on my head. When I was earning that Great Fable, I didn't die. I knew very well that this was their intentions. Kwaya. The tsunami wave got closer and closer. This power wasn't something even a myth grade could stop. However, Kim Dokja knew a way to deal with this tsunami wave. Back during the last scenario of the original storyline, when Yu Young Hyuk was waging the final war against the outer gods, there was a similar moment to this one. At that time, there was a certain constellation beside Yu Young Hyuk. Constellation. Most Ancient Liberator is now looking at you. A single myth-grade constellation couldn't deal with the Great Apocalypse. However, what if there were two? Constellation, Demon King of Salvation, is looking at the Most Ancient Liberator. I would never sacrifice myself ever again. I'd not leave my companions behind. Just like how Yu Young Hyuk didn't want to give up on this life, I shall not give up even until the end. Great Fable, Liberator of the Forgotten Ones, has begun its storytelling. The sole Great Fable that I possessed that could become the power to fight off against the Outer God King. However, I wasn't the one possessing the greatest share of this Great Fable. Great Sage. I sensed 4 rings connecting with each other inside my head. Mai Hawang is agreeing to your request. Bai Moen is agreeing to your request. Dizhan Shengfo is agreeing to your request. The overflowing fable began transforming my incarnation body. Great Sage Heaven's Equal is agreeing to your request. My hair grew in an instant and changed to platinum color. The aura of boundless fable flowed like rapid torrents within all of my veins. And then, I felt the fulfilling sensation of the Rui Jingu Bang's grip in my hand. The power of 5 Sun Wukongs have incarnated into your incarnation body. The golden-hued status settled on top of my coat. The battlefield of the Tongtian was being recreated above the surrounding ocean. Just as the lightning bolt struck, I heard the familiar voice. Let's go, Magneya. I nodded my head. Chapter 478. One Single Fable. Part 2. Kwaya. The Great Sage's status enveloping my entire body now concentrated on the Rui Jingu Bang, held in my right hand. Just like that day on the Tongtian, when we were fighting against the constellations. If there was one thing different, then I was now using the complete power of that Sun Wukong. Great Fable, Liberator of the Forgotten Ones has completely permeated in you. I shall open up a path. I swung the Rui Jingu Bang, and a huge hole opened up in the center of the tsunami wave. However, it was filled back up in an instant. You can't. From the island that the 999th Turnzi Jihai had brought up, the nameless ones began crawling out. Their number was so great that fighting them seemed impossible, but even then, the Great Sage didn't panic at all. Destroy them. I felt this jolt from the arm raised up in the air, and thick, gloomy clouds suddenly filled up the sky. Somersault clouds carrying thunderbolts rang around within the heavens above. Then, blinding blue rays of light crashed on the ocean. Kwaboom! Several strands of lightning smacked into the sea and tore through everything there to carve out a path. These bolts of lightning continued to smash down many more times. What an enormous amount of status that was. This was the power of the one who had reached the last scenario, the Great Sage, heaven's equal, often referred to as the strongest constellation ever was. Gagak, gagagagagak? However, there were several creatures that managed to withstand the storm of lightning bolts. They were slightly larger than the previous outer gods. Wiki ll the constel lat ions, end of starsdrawsnear. These outer gods could string along more concise words. These upper-rank creatures traveled through the underwater tunnel and rose up to the ocean's surface. Son of a... Han Suyang next to us cried out. Kugagagugu. The ground beneath the ocean rocked and lava began boiling up to the surface. Everyone, get away! We quickly climbed aboard Hai's turtle dragon and rose up to the sky. The hazy surface of the ocean was soon filled up with wiggling creatures. Destur Cti on of the worldly Ne is Ko-Ming. The outer gods descended to this world while spewing out some ominous-sounding lines. We had encountered a creature like that before, during the earlier days of the scenario, on the battlefield of the Dark Castle. The fourth wall is faintly stirring. Perhaps, the Devourer of Dream, now acting as a librarian inside the wall, was watching this spectacle as well. How are we supposed to kill those things? Han Suyang gritted her teeth and emitted black flame from both of her hands. Tentacles several kilometers long rose up above the ocean at the same time, causing the tidal waves messily mixed in with magma to rise up even taller than mountain ranges. For some reason, I recalled a certain sentence from the Ways of Survival. The calamity flooding out from the rising island eventually covered up everything on the surface of the planet. If this went on, then the Earth of this world line would end up exactly in that state, too. Great Sage. I borrowed the power of the Great Sage and faced off against the incoming tidal waves. The Rui Jingubang grew in size in the blink and began smacking away the nameless ones trying to get closer. I destroyed a building-sized wave and smashed apart a tentacle flying in. However, there was no end in sight. The tidal wave simply grew larger and larger. If I managed to beat back one wave, then the second showed up. When I destroyed that, the third one pounced on us. And at the center of all these waves were the master of the sunken island and other outer god kings. It's not going to be easy this time. Even the Great Sage was saying something like that. At this rate, we'd be finished even before our enemies get here. Is there any other way to break past that? Need more time. After leaving those words, the Great Sage began gathering more status. My heart rapidly grew warmer and the fable in my veins circulated quickly. Since I knew what he was preparing for, I didn't bother to ask anymore. If my thoughts were correct, then he was getting ready to use that skill from the final pages of the Ways of the Survival. The question was, could my companions and me last until then? In order to buy time, we need to combine our strengths. No matter how excellent both Uriel and the abyssal black flame dragon were as constellations, it was still too difficult for them to endure. Not to mention, there were 4 kings that side. Wait, 4? Kwarururu. The shield of steel slapped away several tentacles flying in. I looked at those huge shoulders standing before me and spoke. Hyansong SSI. The 999th Turnzi Hyansong looked back at me, half of his expression filled with worry, and the other half, confusion. We need your help. Please, help us stop the calamity. He quietly stared at me before asking a question. Can you promise me? I didn't ask what that promise was, because I felt like I already knew. I don't know if I can protect it, but I'll do my best. He stared at me for a bit longer, then his eyes blinked slowly. And right next moment, his eyes shone in the silvery light. I shall believe in you, Fable. Qua 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 qua. Massive branches of steel sprouted from the sides of our ship. They grew in an instant and became walls on 4 sides. While crashing into the waves and the nameless ones, they continued their rapid expansion. A short while later, a square pathway with an open center was created before our eyes. It was a tunnel, created by the advancing walls of steel. "Please go ahead." I nodded and began running on the tunnel. How long did we run like that? I spotted a familiar face at the end of the tunnel. Huiwan SSI. Zhang Huiwan was busy swinging her sword in the middle of the nameless ones. Companions and I quickly crossed the tunnel and aided her. "I'm sorry, I couldn't break past them." She bit her lower lip and muttered out in bitterness. Her voice was thick with despair. She couldn't even get near the 999th turn's Uriel and ended up too preoccupied with cutting down these nameless ones pouncing on her from the sky. Jaya ha ha ha. The steel walls shook heavily while emitting crunching noises. Outer gods were frantically pouncing on them as if they'd devour us in an instant. If we took just one step outside these walls, then they'd really rip us apart like piranhas, that's for sure. Crunch, crunch. The sounds of the nameless ones gnawing on the metal walls could be heard next. Danger. And then, the nameless ones rushed towards us from the exit of the tunnel. They pounced on us like rabid dogs, their slobbering tongues wildly wagging. Ah, ah. In the next second, though, something akin to bright light fell from the sky and sliced apart every single one of them before our eyes. Someone had carved up the tunnel we were standing in from the outside. We were treated to the sight of the Great Apocalypse's battlefield outside the sliced open tunnel. The dead, nameless ones created huge islands of corpses. While looking at this horrible sight of forgotten fables dying meaningless deaths, the children began retching uncontrollably. I too became speechless and looked at this battlefield. Someone murmured in a tearful voice. Just why, to go this far? This was the Great Apocalypse. The scenario that Yu Yunghayok from the original storyline had to fight through. And even now, that very Yu Yunghayok was fighting against the outer god kings in the middle of this great battlefield. Boom. There seemed to be flashes of light on one side of the empty sky, only for an echo of explosion noise to reverberate all the way to the other side. Some things moved with speed that my eyes could barely chase after. The ones that sliced apart the tunnel we stood in were engaged in a bitter battle. I even forgot that we were in a battlefield and was lost in that scene for a little while. Great Fable, Delusional Design, is loudly yapping on. Great Fable, Hellscape of Eternity, is continuing on with its storytelling. The strongest beings from the Forgotten World line were busy competing with the fables. The torrents of Breaking the Sky swordsmanship and the Hellfire, resisting it, and then the remnants of the Black Flame mixed in to create a massive tornado. Strong winds generated from the sword images collided among the gloomy clouds, and ancient fables howled on like aged dragons. Fables were screaming as if to tear the sky apart. The living histories were colliding and extinguishing right before our eyes. And at the center of all the stories was Yu Yunghayok's dark heavenly demon sword. We couldn't afford to waste the precious time he had bought for us. I pointed to our front and spoke. The cause of these waves is the sunken island itself. The nameless ones flooded in like dust clouds. Then, upper-rank outer gods raising up even more waves behind them. And finally, the sunken island in the center of them all. Most likely, the 999th Turnzi Jihai was in the middle of that island. Our priority is to demolish that island. The most optimal course of action is to subdue the 999th Turnzi Jihai, but I took a look beyond the encroaching waves. If the culprit behind this great apocalypse event, the master of the sunken island Jihai, was subdued, the disaster itself should peter out, but the problem was with how to get there. Han Suyong spoke up. Don't forget, the 999th turns Kim Nam-woon and Uriel is over there, too. Even if Yu Yunghayok is facing off against Uriel, what will you do about Kim Nam-woon? Don't worry. I have a plan. Even now, we were at a disadvantage in our combat strength. Well, we had already exhausted a considerable amount of energy during the earlier fights, after all. However, we weren't completely on the back foot either. Gilyanga, Yusanga. Release the insects and monsters to stop the movements of the outer gods as much as possible. Yusanga SSI, if you see an opening, try to cast one more debuff on that EG high, please. Han Suyang, you take care of the nameless ones showing up in our rear. What about you? I'll create a path. Huiwan SSI, please come with me. The moment Zhang Huiwan nodded her head, I unleashed my status. Constellation, Demon King of Salvation, is unleashing his status. With excellent timing, I sensed Di Hyansong's fable enveloping my body next. The outer layer created through the steel transformation sprouted above my skin. We certainly made the right call to go to us first. We definitely needed his fable metal in order to efficiently destroy the outer layers of those nameless ones. Now, everyone. We leapt above the steel walls in the air simultaneously and then descended towards the tidal wave. Outer gods noticed our movements and held out at the same time. Do. Gong Pildu's shells, now coated with the fable metal, flew in from afar to penetrate cleanly through the outer layers of the nameless ones. Using the sounds of the cannons as our interludes, we ran on top of the waves. Tentacles flew in at us with no gaps in between them, but Han Suyang burned them away. Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon is roaring out. The black flame's fires caused the outer gods to scream in pain. Zhang Huiwan and I continued to run on this path. We felt the time/space surrounding the island faintly distort. Yusanga was activating her powers now. Dokja SSI, over there. We saw the gigantic turtle dragon taking up the highest location of the island in the distance. The 999th turn EG High was standing on top of the ship's figurehead to command the outer gods. Ha, where do you think you're going? As if he was waiting for us, the 999th turns Kim Nam-woon revealed himself. I shall protect our Ji-hai. Even though he was in the middle of fighting Yu Young-hyuk, he must have had enough leeway to interfere with us. Maybe, Yu Young-hyuk was in some kind of danger right now. I gave the signal to Zhang Huiwan. Don't worry about me, and go help Yu Young-hyuk first. I'm sure he's slowly reaching his limit by now. Don't get killed. Understand? Zhang Huiwan spread open her wings and disappeared in order to aid Yu Young-hyuk. Isn't that so sweet? But, don't you worry. I'll send both of you away in an instant. Kim Nam-woon's figure seemed to melt. His shadow split apart into hundreds and countless figures leapt out from them. Kim Dokja thought to himself. He couldn't dodge this dot. Hundreds, no, thousands of daggers were unilaterally aiming for my body. They moved as if they were alive. The peak of knife fighting Kim Nam-woon had comprehended was permeating within each and every one of those blade tips. And each attack was strong enough to leave a fatal wound. Even then, I quietly smiled. When I met you for the first time, you also wielded your knife at me. But, it's my first time meeting you? Kim Nam-woon, aren't you curious how you of this world died? One of Kim Nam-woon's clones frowned after hearing me. Who cares how that weakling got killed? I used the Ruijin Gubang to deflect the incoming daggers. A few of them still managed to leave behind deep cuts on my thigh and shoulder, but thankfully, Yi Hyansong's fable metal defended against the attacks in my stead. Unfortunately, even his forged steel began developing cracks at the vicious barrage of attacks raining down. As if to fully recreate a certain memory, I started evading the incoming attacks. Waist, right side dot. Right eye dot. Left thigh dot. Suchut, chut. Faint sparks danced about. I took a step back after getting hit by 2 more daggers. You were trash in this world line. A thug who killed a powerless old man just to clear the first scenario. That's what the first scenario was about, anyway. I ain't curious about such shit. You wielded the dagger just like now, until you ended up on your knees begging for your life like a pathetic loser. And then, died miserably after your head exploded. For the first time ever, his movement came to a stop. His previous mischievous expression was nowhere to be found, only his glare aimed at me remaining. "Aren't you curious about who killed you like that?" The dagger was now aiming for my left eye. "Oh, the sword forged to cut down the sleeping giants. Descend to this place, now." Quia! Everything before my eyes seemed to wane as the massive storm of aftermath raged on. A steel giant was summoned through the dimensions, and it now stood there imposingly. The greatest fable weapon in Tartarus, Pluto. A bright voice belonging to Kim Nam-woon came out from its cockpit. "Ha ha hot. Hey, grasshopper man, been a while." However, I couldn't smile back to him. Because, what I was about to do should prove to be very inhumane to this guy. "Ing? What's this?" Kim Nam-woon discovered something small floating before his nose and tilted his head. Almost at the same time, the other Kim Nam-woon muttered in sheer dumbfoundedness. "A giant robot? Yuwakek? Suchachachuchit." Same existences from different world lines have met for the first time. The 999th turns Kim Nam-woon didn't possess a fable of fighting against me. However, what about now? Disconnected film theory is activating. Memories were connecting. As the two existences from different world lines met each other, the unconnected fable momentarily would become one. The 999th turns Kim Nam-woon, the monarch of the Great Abyss, glared at me with his brows arched up high. It seemed that he had realized everything. "You. That's right. The one who killed you in this world line is." The surrounding time and space transformed into that of the subway from the first scenario. To the place where I killed Kim Nam-woon. I grinned and continued on. Stage transformation is activating. It was none other than me. Chapter 479. One Single Fable. Part 3. Fable, Master of Steel, has begun its storytelling. The walls of steel created by 999th turns Hyun Song blanketed the surroundings and expanded rapidly. This power was strong enough to even defend the entire planet when deployed within Oz. Qua 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 qua. The expanding steel intertwined with the stage transformation and began creating the partitions of the subway. This stage was utterly familiar to me. Even now, just by closing my eyes, I'd be able to vividly recall this cabin from the first scenario. A myth-grade constellations stage has been generated. Suchachuchut. Now originally, stage transformation was quite similar to augmented reality. In other words, the surrounding topography wouldn't change simply because it had been transformed into a stage. However, the case this time was slightly different. Starstream is paying close attention to your stage. The absolute majority of constellations are watching the stage. Great Dakibis are jealous of your stage. Due to the large number of gazes, the stage grade of the stage transformation is increasing. Starstream's probability was directly linked to the number of gazes watching on. A scenario that a large number of beings watched was able to generate a powerful fable, and a stage watched by many could generate sizable impact in return. The anticipation carried within those countless gazes could shift the probability, in other words. On that day, the demon of delusions and the demon king of salvation met for the first time in that place. And the shifting probability could sometimes turn fake into reality. Due to the effects of the disconnected film theory, the materialization of the stage transformation is incomplete. Within the applicable stage, the characters Kim Nam-woon and the Monarch of the Great Abyss will be treated as the same individual. The Monarch of the Great Abyss's stage compatibility is 87.351%. The possibility of a sudden end exists. The fake becoming real on stage could only occur for a brief period of time. While everyone was focusing here, before the mysteriousness of this stage came undone, I had to finish everything. I unhesitantly approached Kim Nam-woon. I didn't sense myself growing any stronger from the effects of the stage transformation. However, I was filled with confidence, instead. The kind that a wolf might feel when hunting down a rabbit. What kind of dog's head is this? The enraged 999th turns Kim Nam-woon pounced on me. Since he was under the influence of the stage transformation, his mobility had become quite sluggish, as if he was that Kim Nam-woon from the first scenario whose average stat points didn't even reach 10. The problem was, my own body was no different from back then during the first scenario, too. Swish. I lowered my head and dodged the dagger. I was reading the direction of his attacks through the Omniscient reader's viewpoint, so evading him wasn't that difficult. The rules of the first scenario will apply to the applicable stage. Incarnation bodies within the stage will grow stronger by killing another life. Memories continued to resurface. Right. We fought like this back in the first scenario. Just for the sake of 100 coins as our survival fee, people had to die. Just for those 100 coins, people killed each other. We managed to survive such a world. Many constellations are recalling their first scenarios. The 999th turns Kim Nam-woon pressed down on his temples as if he was suffering from migraine, then began cackling at me. Haha. So, this is how you want to play it? Quite interesting. But, you don't look like you're enjoying yourself at all? His glare was filled with the prickly killing intent. The Monarch of the Great Abyss's stage compatibility has decreased slightly. Even if the effects of the stage transformation was absolute, this particular stage was recreated through a simple trick. The longer I took, the weaker the connection between the 999th turns Kim Nam-woon to his third turn counterpart would become. What the hell, Grasshopper Man? What's going on here? What's happening? The third turn's Kim Nam-woon raised himself up in the corner. He had been altered into a small toy robot due to the effects of the stage transformation. He awkwardly clung onto my leg. The 999th turns Kim Nam-woon saw this scene and muttered out. How disappointing. To think that I'd get killed by a bastard like him and end up as a trash can robot. What the hell are you talking about? You wanna die, buddy? Hey, Grasshopper Man. Kill that son of a bitch. If there is no killing taking place in the next 5 minutes, all incarnation bodies within the cabin will be exterminated. This would be my first time seeing the stage transformation imposing such a strict restriction. Wasn't this almost at the level of an actual main scenario? Die. The dagger sliced the air and flew right in. I used the surrounding objects to dodge the attacks. The movements of my body might have become dull, but I was not the same Kim Dokja as I used to be back then. Kim Nam-woon's attacks scratched the subway's steel doors and floors. The power behind each of his thudding attacks was gradually getting stronger. The aura of chaos was faintly swirling around him. The effects of the stage transformation on him was already declining. The odds of victory would tilt towards his favor if this continued on. However, the 999th turns Kim Nam-woon seemed to be getting more and more anxious. Instead, character, Monarch of the Great Abyss, is getting agitated. Character, Monarch of the Great Abyss, is urgently surveying his surroundings. Why was this? Why did his complexion look so poor? I took a closer look to find his cheeks and neck soaked in cold sweat. Character, Monarch of the Great Abyss, detests this space. You rat-like bastard. A portion of constellations are suspicious of the outer god king status. A small number of constellations are scorning the small fry-like utterance. The movements of the 999th turns Kim Nam-woon were getting simpler, perhaps due to his increasing anxiety. If there is no killing taking place in the next 3 minutes, all incarnation bodies within the cabin will be exterminated. 3 minutes remained. Dokja SSI? What's going on here? And that was when I heard a certain voice. Kim Nam-woon and I both turned our heads in the direction of where that voice came from. And immediately, chills ran down on my spine. There was another who bore witness to their fight in that place. I had forgotten about it. The most righteous person in the carriage number 3807 on that day. That I and Kim Nam-woon weren't the only people riding in that subway that day. Ha 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 ha. Kim Nam-woon exploded in the fit of maddened laughter, abandoned me, and rushed towards you saying ah. Perhaps due to the effects of the stage transformation, she was now kitted out in the uncomfortable outfit she had on during the first scenario. He closed the distance in an instant and his dagger was swung towards her. As the blade scythed the air with a sharp swish. Slice, dash. Sliced strands of hair danced in the air. Yu Sang-ah and her hardened expression were using agile movements to evade Kim Nam-woon's attacks. As a matter of fact, she was far more agile than I was. Not bad. Character, Monarch of the Great Abyss, has received the effects of blackening. However, his movements should grow faster and faster with passing time. On that day, the Demon of Delusions came to understand his new world. The effects of the stage transformation was getting stronger. That a new set of rules was needed in a brand new world. I could see Yu Sang-ah's complexion getting paler and paler. There was no time. I needed to find a way. Somehow Hyung. A small hand tugged at my clothes. If that boy didn't catch any insects that day. Lee Gil-young was also here, with a babyish face of a young boy. He looked exactly like how I remembered during the first scenario. The boy in despair after losing his parent was extending his palm out with a determined expression. Constellation, ruler of the deepest pit, is laughing ominously. Several bright yellow grasshoppers rested on the boy's palm. Thanks. I grabbed the grasshoppers and started running. The insects were then crushed along with crunching noises. You killed a life form. Your incarnation body has been strengthened due to the effects of the stage transformation. You killed a life form. Your incarnation body has been strengthened due to the effects of the stage transformation. My physical strength increased explosively as I ran inside the cabin. The back of Kim Nam-woon's head, currently cackling away like a madman, was now right before my nose. Die. 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 I simply grabbed the nape of his neck and slammed the bastard down on the subway's floor. His legs trembled like an insect being crushed. You son of a... He swiftly jumped out from my grasp and swung his dagger in my direction. I didn't bother to dodge that. Kagagagak. Because there was no need to. The knife continued to leave behind scratches. Although blood did trickle down, the blade failed to gouge out the flesh beneath the skin. The final scenes of the first scenario flitted past my view as if it was overlapping with reality. Kim Nam-woon's attacks continued to get faster, but he failed to break past Lee Hyun-sung's strengthened, steel transformation. Just what the hell is this? The 999th turns Kim Nam-woon spat out expletives and wielded his dagger. However, no matter how many times he swung it, there was no use. Because, the end of this stage was already set in stone. Looks like you only have 2 minutes remaining. Uaya. Kim Nam-woon and his distorted expression swung his dagger indiscriminately. Only his poor blade ended up breaking, however, and it fell to the ground. 1 minute 30 seconds, then 1 minute 20. As time continued to tick down, Kim Nam-woon's figure slowly crumbled to the ground. It wasn't because he simply lost all his strength. What attacked him was a sin far more fundamental in nature. The foundational fable of Kim Nam-woon, the demon of delusion. The surrounding space began distorting. The pool of blood was now spreading on the once empty floor of the cabin. It was not the blood we had shed. There's just no way. The shivering 999th turns Kim Nam-woon plopped down on the spot. Great fable, delusional design, is losing control. Right here in this place was where his fable, delusional design, had germinated. Kim Nam-woon relied on abnormal adaptability to forge a new world he had to live in, but what about the version of him who had witnessed the end of that world? What kind of meaning did that world hold for him? See crap like tea, this won't. Corpses on the floor were glaring at us, their eyes wide open. Those that I failed to protect, those with their heads missing or their hearts pierced through. Those dying while vomiting blood were now looking at us. Kim Nam-woon's face shook hard as if he was having a seizure. It was an expression that didn't suit him. Are you feeling the guilt after having come this far? The 999th turn's Kim Nam-woon trembled and looked up at me, his lips bobbing up and down. You're right, I'm trash. So what? Kim Nam-woon from the initial regression turns would have definitely said that. However, even such a guy had said something different during the 999th turn. I've been thinking about this sometimes. Maybe I should have been the one to die that day. Captain, you also think that way, don't you? The psychopath, Kim Nam-woon, the demon of delusion. Even after I finished reading the entirety of the original novel, my opinion on that guy hadn't changed. Exclusive skill, reading comprehension, is activating. However, that couldn't have been Kim Nam-woon's everything. The Ways of Survival I read was no doubt nothing more than just the tip of an iceberg called this world. And so, the Kim Nam-woon I didn't know must have existed somewhere, too. Kim Nam-woon, who ended up seeing a world's end for someone's sake. Kim Nam-woon, capable of wandering aimlessly for 40,000 years out of his love for someone. Kim Nam-woon, carrying on the sake of protecting his loyalty to his comrades. What if such a Kim Nam-woon existed in the world somewhere? And what if such a Kim Nam-woon was the one who saw the end of the 999th turn? His delusion was being eaten away. That was the history he endured on by exchanging away his personality. The ego of the Kim Nam-woon, a second-year student from Cheongil High School, was now leaking out from its hidden spot beneath his mask. I killed them. That's right, The shivering Kim Nam-woon held his broken dagger and began sobbing away. Right. You did kill them. As I said that, I took a look at the rear of the subway. I saw Lee Hyun-sung's steel tunnel, now merged with the stage transformation. And this near-endless tunnel was overflowing with corpses. The nameless ones, their names now long forgotten, were crying out. And they are the people I didn't save. A new world requires a new story. That was the price for completing the one single fable. We lived for the purpose of completing this petty Gi Sung Jon Jiol. Your hidden scenario is on the verge of completion. All of your fables are desiring your conclusion. Every constellation in Starstream can sense that your conclusion is drawing near. And now, I had to see the end of this damn story. The focus in Kim Nam-woon's eyes blurred and he brought the tip of the broken blade closer to his neck. 15 seconds remaining until the application of the stage transformation's rules. Once the time limit has been reached, all incarnations who didn't obey the rules will be killed instantly. Yu Sang-ah and Lee Gil-young were looking at this side. Even the third turn's Kim Nam-woon, currently in the figure of a toy robot, was looking at me also. If the time limit elapsed in this fashion, then the 999th turn's Kim Nam-woon would die for sure on this stage. The stage itself might be fake, but his fable infused to this place was all real. He'd die in this place. Just like those he had killed. Or, like how it was for him in the third turn. He'd die a miserable death while accepting his life. The problem, however, was with the third turn's Kim Nam-woon. He'd also perished due to the fact that he was connected to his 999th turn counterpart through the disconnected film theory. I couldn't let that happen. The stage transformation has been cancelled. The surrounding landscape changed and the stage disappeared. The memories connected through the disconnected film theory were fading away. The subway scattered away, and all the actors involved also returned to their previous positions. However, the 999th turn's Kim Nam-woon remained on his knees. Certain stories, despite being fake, possessed power as if they were real deal. The stage might be gone now, but the original sin didn't go away. His ruined and frayed fable was scattering away. I quietly stared at him and his lowered head before lightly kicking away the dagger he was still holding. Kim Nam-woon, you can't be saved. Then, I pulled out the unbreakable faith. The gleaming white sword light seemed to screech out from the blade. I deliberately raised the sword up high so that everyone could see me. And then, Every constellation of Starstream is waiting expectantly of the outer God King's death. No. Along with a horrifying, desperate cry coming from somewhere, my unbreakable faith cut something down.